It seemed like any other day. I thought I'd stuck to my routine for weeks, trying to ignore the strange feeling that something was off. Rachel had been distant for a while, but I convinced myself it was just work stress. We built a life together, and I never thought anything could come between us. Looking back, the signs had been there, small things that only made sense in hindsight. I spent my days lost in thought, driving from place to place. I was just going about my usual errands and routine, going through the motions of daily life, until a simple, unexpected event at a stoplight threw everything into chaos. I was already feeling a bit worn out, but nothing could have prepared me for what was about to happen. Being in the wrong place at the wrong time never leads to anything good. I couldn't control it, though. I was waiting at a red light when a car pulled up next to me. The driver, he motioned for me to roll down my window and said, "You got a flat tire." I was grateful for the warning. I turned into the Walmart car park nearby to check. Sure enough, a screw had punctured the tire, causing a slow but steady leak. I had to figure out my next move. I decided to head home and buy a jar of that slime. When I returned, I pulled the screw out. Big mistake. Air started hissing out. I screwed it back in and filled up the tire. I was only 15 miles from home at the gas station in the parking lot, and I kept checking the tire. If the air got too low, I'd use the slime. About 5 miles from home, I noticed in the side mirror that the tire was getting low. I pulled into a store, but there was no air. It was time to check the slime. I put it in, and green slime oozed out. I guess they call it slime for a reason, but the air stopped hissing as I was about to get back in the car. A pickup truck pulled up. The truck pulled up. It was one of those massive ones with huge tires sitting so high you'd need a ladder to get in. I recognized it straight away. The door opened, and a tall guy with blonde hair, cowboy boots, and a giant belt buckle stepped out. I couldn't help but chuckle to myself, but it didn't last. The passenger door opened, and a beautiful woman with raven hair got out. I definitely knew her. It was Rachel, the woman I'd been married to for 18 years. What the hell? They parked off to the side and didn't even notice my car. It was a company car, a small, boxy import that didn't stand out. They walked into the store holding hands, and she was laughing. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I couldn't breathe or move. All I could do was stand there like an idiot. Now I remembered where I'd seen this guy before. He worked at the same company as Rachel. She was the office manager at a mental health clinic. I'd seen his truck outside their building, but I couldn't remember his name. Then it hit me, Jerry Garner. But why wasn't Rachel at work? I was going to find out. I went back to my car and waited until they came out of the store carrying coffee cups. He helped her into the truck and they sped off. I followed at a safe distance. He pulled up outside our house and drove into the garage. The door closed behind them, and I couldn't see anything else. I sat there for about 30 minutes, but the tire kept nagging at me. I checked it, but if it was low, I couldn't tell. 2 hours later, they left. As they passed me, I held up a file folder to hide my face. Not that they would have noticed. They were too wrapped up in each other. Rachel didn't leave work until 5, and now it was only 2:30. I had time first. I had to go inside and see what I could find at 4. I needed to pick up Toby, but I had no idea what I was going to tell her. Toby was my 15-year-old, my eldest daughter. I couldn't imagine what I'd find inside, but maybe I'd get some answers when I entered the house. It was quiet. The only sound was the drip of the faucet in Toby's bathroom and the whisper of air from the vents. I looked around but didn't see anything unusual. I checked upstairs. The bed had sheets. My heart sank. I pressed my back against the wall and slid to the floor, feeling numb. There seemed to be only one explanation. I sat there for about 30 minutes. My mind was racing. I couldn't make sense of my thoughts. I felt like I'd been pillioned. My stomach growled, so I got up to grab a Sprite. I was feeling hot and sweaty, so I went to the bathroom. I fumbled for a washcloth, soaked it in cold water, and wiped my face. After washing up, I felt a bit better. That's when I noticed something. The shower floor was wet. They had showered before heading back to work. I wandered back into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. It was the same bed my wife and I shared, and her lover had just used that thought to jolt me up, and I looked around in horror. This felt like a crime scene. I had no clue what to do. Well, divorcing Rachel was a given, but beyond that, I had no idea where to start. And I still had to pick up Toby from school. What was I supposed to tell her? I stumbled out to the car, feeling like I'd been drunk for 10 days. My head throbbed, and I probably looked terrible. I wasn't in any shape to drive, but I couldn't leave Toby waiting. Suddenly, I realized she was the only person I could truly rely on. My baby was going to be all right. I had to make sure of that as I pulled into the line of cars. I saw her standing by the school door. She walked down the sidewalk to the car, looking so beautiful it made my heart ache. Toby had her mother's dark hair and skin, almost Mediterranean, and the most striking eyes I'd ever seen. They looked dark brown like her eyes, but with streaks of gold and green. The doctor called them hazel, but I'd never seen. She was tall, like me, with long honey-brown legs and undeniable beauty. She tossed her backpack in the back seat and leaned in to kiss me, but froze. Mito motioned to his father. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Are you sick? Did something happen? Is Mommy okay? What's going on, Daddy?" Her voice was rising with worry, and I could hear the fear creeping in. I had to say something. "I'm fine, kitten," I said. "No one's hurt or sick, but I need to talk to you." "Toby, let's go to the park. I just need to hold you and talk for a minute. No more questions until we get there." "All right, Daddy, but you're scaring me." "I know, kitten, but it's going to be okay," I told her, hoping it wasn't a lie. It only took 5 minutes to get to the park. I had pushed her on those swings 1,000 times. Rachel and I used to sit on the benches and watch her play. Those were happy days. Was my life going to be nothing but memories of better times? We walked to a bench and she took my hand, swinging her leg. Her arms were just like she used to as a little girl. We sat down, and I struggled to find the right words. "Just tell me, Daddy," she said. "I can handle it." "Well, I'm not sure I can," I replied. I told her everything I had seen and everything I had felt. The tears streamed down my face. She held my hand the entire time. When I was finished, she clung to me. "That doesn't sound good, Daddy," she said. "We need to go home and talk to Mom about it. It all depends on what she tells us. I know it looks bad, but we don't have the full story yet, so we need to ask her." I kissed the top of her head and felt proud. My baby girl was braver than I was. She tugged my hand and I stood up. "Do you want to go?" I asked her. Her eyes sparkled. She had just gotten her driver's license. A flicker of doubt crossed her face, but disappeared quickly. She drove us home carefully, and sure enough, Rachel's car was in the garage. Rachel greeted us at the door with hugs and kisses, like everything was normal. Either she was an award-winning actress, or I had misunderstood everything. Winning actress, or I had misunderstood everything. "How about takeout tonight?" she asked. "I'll get it." "I think we need to talk to you for a minute, Mom." Toby said okay. "Everything?" Rachel asked. Toby replied, "Let's find out." We went inside and I sat next to Toby on the couch. Rachel stayed in, the ugly chair she insisted on buying. "What's wrong?" she asked, with no hint of concern on her face. "How was your day?" I asked. She gave me a puzzled look. "The usual," she said. "One of the company reps brought lunch from the onion basket. It was busy, and I barely had a minute to myself." "Why are you asking?" Toby asked. "You've been at the office all day, right?" Rachel said, "What's with the questions? What's going on?" "Were you not here at the house this afternoon with Jerry Garner?" I asked. Her face turned pale. "No, of course not," she said. "Are you accusing me of something?" "I saw you," I said. "What didn't you see?" "Anything," she stammered. "What are you trying to do?" "He's lying," Toby said. "I was at work all day. You can ask Angel." "No, I don't think he's lying, Mom." "I think you're lying," Toby said. "I'm not asking Angel. She'll lie for you. I think I'll call David Jones, your boss. He won't lie for you." "What's his number?" "He's going tonight." Rachel said, "I'll have him call you tomorrow." "What are you two doing trying to trick me? You think you can just come in here and trip me up? What are you accusing me of?" She was trying to go on the offensive. "I think you've been lying to yourself." "I told her you lied." "Rachel, all three of us know it. Why did you? You do it." I could see her mind racing, trying to figure out what to say next. Finally, she spoke. "All right, yes, I was here. That's why I didn't want to tell you. I knew you'd grill me and accuse me of something. No one accused you." Toby responded, "But I am now. You tried to make it seem like Dad was lying. You twisted. You're covering up your own lies. What are you lying about, Mom? Are you having an affair with that idiot you don't even know?" Rachel snapped. "Why call him an idiot? I've met him twice." Toby said, "The way he looks at me makes me want to shower, but that's not the point. Are you having an affair with him?" Her eyes darted around as if she was cornered. After a moment, she broke down. "I didn't want it to turn out like this," she said, her voice shaky. "I wasn't ready for what happened." Toby pressed. "You fell in love with Jerry," she confessed, glancing at me. "I'm sorry, Oliver. It just happened. We worked closely, and I don't know. He feels like the other half of me. We connected and I couldn't stop it. We're in love. I was going to tell you when the time was right. Once we both get divorced, we'll get married. I'm sorry. I didn't want you to find out this way. Toby, it'll be okay. You can see your dad whenever you want. Jerry has a nice house. On the lake, he even has a daughter he really likes, Toby. He'll be so happy." "Are you crazy, Toby? I'm not living with that idiot. He'll probably sneak into my room at night. I'll live with Dad. I won't see you anymore. How could you do this?" She spun around and stormed upstairs, slamming the door. I heard. The lock clicked. Rachel looked at me. Her face was pale and trembling. "She'll get over it," she said quietly. "Jerry's a really nice guy. Oliver, I think you'll like him. I'm sorry, but I need to be happy. Jerry makes me happy. That's all there is to it." I just stared at her, trying to process the person she had become. It was like she'd turned into someone else entirely. I wasn't going to argue. It was obvious she was lost to me. "Whatever you say, Rachel. When are you moving out?" she asked. "Moving out?" I replied, confused. "I don't have anywhere to go," she said. "We need to tell his wife first, and we both have to," I told her. I told her in a calm but firm tone that we needed to get divorced before we figured out what was next. I also informed her that she would be moving out within 3 days. Her mouth dropped open in shock. She protested that she couldn't just be kicked out of her own house. I reminded her that I owned the house before she even met me. It was paid off before we got married, so it's not marital property. "My name is on the deed, yours isn't. You're moving out." "Where am I supposed to go?" she asked, her voice shaky. "You're just going to throw me out on the street? I don't care where you go." I said, "Maybe you can find a room at the cheating hooker motel. Of those places that rent by the hour, that's where you and people like you belong." Her eyes filled with tears. "You don't have to call me names," she said softly. "I didn't plan to fall in love with Jerry. It just happened. We clicked, and I realized I had to be with him. I never meant to hurt you." "So you just accidentally hurt me," I said sarcastically, like tripping and accidentally poking your eye out. "My mom used to warn me about that, and now I get it. It was an accident, right?" "Well, that makes it all better. You don't have to be sarcastic," she said. "Why can't you just accept that Jerry and I love each other?" "I'm a bit confused, Rachel. You told me this morning that you loved me, but now you're saying you love him. I'm just trying to understand." "I love you, Oliver," she said, almost pleading. "I'll always love you. I'm just in love with Jerry. That clears it up, I think. You've been telling me you were in love with me. I thought we were in love. I thought that's why we got married. I guess I was mistaken." She insisted on reaching for my hand, but I pulled away. She said, "You've got 3 days. I said, "If you're not out by then, I'll have the sheriff remove you and toss your stuff on the lawn." "Please, Oliver," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "This doesn't have to end like this. We can still be friends. Jerry wants to be your friend too. We have Toby to think about. I told you I love you. I don't want to lose you as a friend. We've been together too long for you to just throw it all away." The grief I'd been feeling was suddenly replaced by burning anger. "You're delusional, Rachel," I said, my voice low and cold. "I won't be friends with you and that dirtbag. If he ever sees me, he'd better run. As for you, you're the enemy now. I'll destroy everything you have. You've got 3 days. After that, I never want to." I said goodbye and went into the bedroom, leaving her standing there, speechless. That was it for me. She followed me around, still going on about staying friends, while I moved her stuff into the spare bedroom. She had more clothes in the closet than I could carry, so I just tossed them onto the bed and I took a pile of her clothes to the spare room and hung them in the closet. She stood there for a while, talking and watching me. When she went to hang up her clothes, I took the chance to slip out and lock the bedroom door. I heard her walking down the hall, but when she tried the knob, she gave up and walked away. A few minutes later, Toby texted to ask how I was. I replied that I was fine, but that I wouldn't be seeing him the next morning. He texted back, "Okay, love you too. Drive me to school in the morning." I told him I didn't want to ride with her CC. I went to bed and lay awake for hours trying to figure out my next steps. I must have fallen asleep around 3. I set my phone alarm for 7, got up, took a shower, and called my boss. I told him I was getting a divorce and needed a few days off. He told me to take as much time as I needed and offered his condolences. I went downstairs, brewed some coffee, and had a couple of cups. I made breakfast for Toby and me. She came down on time, looking as beautiful as ever, and eagerly ate breakfast after a while. Rachel came in, poured herself some coffee, and tried to talk to us, but we both ignored her. It was time to take Toby to school, and Rachel asked if she was ready. Toby just looked at her, then turned to me and asked, "Are you ready, Daddy?" I jingled my keys and she grabbed her backpack. Rachel said, her voice full of frustration, "Act like toddlers if that makes you feel better." She stormed off, grabbed her purse, threw us another glance, and left. I walked into the building and thought about my friend Dan, who had recently gone through a divorce. I decided to call him and ask about his lawyer. Dan didn't recommend his own lawyer but suggested I use his wife's lawyer instead. I looked up the number, and when I called, a woman answered and put me on hold. After I explained my situation, she agreed to meet with me that afternoon. I started taking steps to resolve the issue. We had an investment, but there wasn't much I could do about it right away. However, I wasn't going to let her rack up huge credit card bills, so I called and lowered the limits on our cards to $500. This had an impact on. I was also affected, but I wasn't willing to finance her affair. The meeting with Elizabeth Baxter didn't go well. She had some assumptions I had to clear up before we could even begin. She assumed I was leaving Rachel for someone else. I told her the truth. Rachel is having an affair with a coworker. They're both married and planning to divorce and marry each other. "I'm sorry," she said, "but I don't represent people who leave for someone else. I can't live with myself if I do. I get it. We have a daughter. I want to minimize the damage. Do you think I could get custody of her?" "It's possible. It can go to either parent, but in practice it's harder for fathers, especially with daughters." "How old is she, and does she want to stay with you?" "She's 15, and yes, she wants to stay with me." I answered, "That's a big plus." She said in this state, children over 14 can choose which parent to live with, and their wishes are heavily considered. If she were younger, your chances would be slim. But since she's 15 and wants to stay with you, that will work in your favor for the custody agreement. Just do your best. I told her as I drove home. I kept wondering what my next step should be. I knew I had to do something, but it had to be legal. Getting arrested was not an option. That would mean losing Toby, which was not an option. I needed a plan. Burning down houses was out of the question. You have to make sure it's not your own. This was going to take careful thought. I suspected Jerry's wife was as clueless as I had been, so the first step would be letting her know I needed to make a list first. I'd inform Rachel's I needed to tell the parents the truth, and I also had to let our friends know. I decided to start with social media. She had a Facebook account for our family, so I played around with it and used it to my advantage. I used the Messenger app to send her a message and told her what I'd found out. I also searched online and found that Jerry's wife had done the same. I took screenshots of a few pictures and posted them on Rachel's page, announcing that we were getting divorced and that she had found her soulmate in Jerry. I changed my password and logged out. I felt pretty satisfied with myself. I just hoped it wouldn't take too long before her friends and family started bombarding her phone and Facebook page. I really hoped Jerry's wife would understand what was going on. I didn't know her, and I felt really sorry for the chaos this would bring into her life, but if she was like me, she deserved to know the truth. I called my mom, and the conversation didn't go well, as I'd expected. After the initial shock, she just said she'd tell Dad and that they were there for me if I needed anything. I figured I'd let Rachel break the news to her parents herself. We were close, and I didn't want to be the reason for any estrangement. I wasn't sure how to break the news to them. I felt like your daughter is a cheater, and I didn't want to be the one to tell them that. I thought they'd probably be angry with me for telling them. It didn't take long for everything to unravel. I got a message from Rachel at 2 p.m. She was angry. I was a bit satisfied, to be honest. You just couldn't leave it alone, could you? "I know you blocked me on Facebook. Take that crap down. Jerry's wife doesn't know yet. My friends are blowing up my phone, asking what's going on. My parents know. I'm telling you, Oliver. Clean this up." "No, Rachel. You don't get to boss me around." I replied, "What are you, 5 years old? Take it down, Oliver. I'm serious. You should be happy." I said, "Now everyone knows about you and your soulmate. Are you ashamed? People know you're a cheating strumpet." She began to reply, but then stopped, realizing how absurd her denial would sound. Oliver, please take it down. It wasn't. It was bound to happen. You gave up control when you cheated. Rachel, you lost any right to my respect or courtesy. I told you you're the enemy now, so deal with it. I hung up when the phone buzzed again. I ignored it. It was time to pick up Toby. When I told her about my conversation with Elizabeth Baxter, she was happy to hear she'd likely stay with me. I think she'll stay with me, but overall she wasn't pleased. What's wrong with Mum, Dad? She asked. You know, I love her, but she's always been a bit immature. I've always felt like I had two kids, her and you. Did you ever notice that? Not really, but now that you mention it, yeah, she's impulsive. But I never thought she'd do something like this. Well, we'll figure it out. Dad, I don't ever want to be in the same house with that guy unless you're there. I don't care what you have to do, just make sure it doesn't happen. Okay, I promise. I was enjoying my second slice of pizza on the way home when my phone. I got a call from Bob, Rachel's dad. I wasn't expecting it. I told Toby and she said to put it on speaker. Bob got straight to the point. Oliver, I don't know what's going on, but Rachel came over last night, asking to stay with us. Care to explain why? I replied that she said you kicked her out. I replied that I had, but I began to explain that I didn't know why. Bob interrupted and asked if I wanted to wait for her explanation. I asked if I could just tell him what she'd said. He pressed for more information. She'd been having an affair with Jerry Garner, who was a colleague of hers. They were both planning to divorce and get married. I said, "That's insane, Oliver. How do you know that?" Bob asked, "How do you know that?" I explained what had happened. I said, "I caught them together yesterday." Toby suddenly chimed in, "Hey, Grandpa, I'm on speaker. There's no misunderstanding. I was there when she told. Dad, I'm really sorry, Grandpa. I love you." Her voice broke as she started crying. Bob's voice cracked when he responded, "Don't cry, sweetheart. Please be strong. We love you, and Grandma does too. I'll try to talk some sense into your mom." Oliver, are you still there? "Yeah, I'm really sorry, Bob. Don't worry about Toby. I know you love Rachel and you'll do what you need to do. I have a lot of respect for you. I just hope you don't end up hating me when this is all over," I said, trying to reassure him that's never going to happen. Bob said firmly, "I'll figure out what's going on. Call me if you need anything. If there's anything I can do, just let me know." It all worked out in the end, but it was a tough road. I won't go into the nitty-gritty of the divorce process, but let's just say it was a long, painful journey. Rachel was delusional, thinking she'd get custody of Toby. That didn't happen. Miss Baxter was as good as her. I got full custody because Toby wanted to live with me. After a private meeting, the judge ruled that Rachel would get unlimited visitation, but Toby wouldn't be left alone with her and Jerry Garner. In any case, it didn't matter anymore. His wife divorced him. It was more of an exaggeration, at least on his part. Just 2 weeks after I discovered the affair, Jerry was already looking for his next conquest. All their grand plans disappeared like fog on a sunny day. The divorce took 7 months to finalize, which was a surprise. Rachel changed her mind during the second court hearing. She asked the judge to schedule counseling. Neither Miss Baxter nor I had anything to say, and the judge ordered it. We were assigned 8 to 10 sessions. Our counselors were an odd pair of old hippies. In the first session, they asked us to state our goals. Rachel's goals were long and complicated. She seemed to believe that I understood her. He said that her happiness was the universe's main purpose and that she only desired good things. My goal was much simpler. "What's your goal for these sessions, Mr. Berryman?" the counselor asked. "I want to finish them," I replied. "Mr. Berryman, do you really not want to address the issues?" the counselor asked. "That's what led to your marriage ending up like this." "I'm sorry, Mr. Rodman, but I don't think my issues are the reason why. I'm fine with my problems and I don't want to work on them." Rachel and Mr. Rodman were both shocked. Rachel spoke up quickly and said, "Oliver, how do you expect things to get back to normal if you won't even talk about it? If you're not willing to talk about it, I'm not going to force the issue. I'm not here to fix anything or work on any problems. I'm here because the court ordered it. I'll do what I need to do and then we'll go back to court and finalize the divorce. That's my plan. Do you realize that if I report if you don't cooperate, you could be held in contempt of court?" Mr. Rodman said, "I don't know about that." I replied, You mean if you lie to the judge, these sessions are recorded? I'm sure my lawyer would love to subpoena you for perjury. I'm here. I'm doing what you ask. You asked for my goals and I gave them all the information they asked for. I'm cooperating fully. He blushed. The judge probably expected you to work through your issues. I'm not responsible for the judge's expectations. I said only for my own. He tried to make it difficult by assigning tasks that required me to spend more time with Rachel. She worked hard to wear me down. Oliver, how long would it take for you to give up the divorce and work things out? She asked. It's not for me to say, I said. What do you mean by an act of God? She finally asked. Well, if you could turn back time and avoid getting involved with Jerry, that would work. Otherwise, only God has that kind of power. Do you have any special powers? I don't know about Rachel, other than your ability to attract other men. We carried on with the boring exercises and mantras, and finally it was over. Back in court, the judge asked if we'd made any progress. There's no chance my client will stay married to his wife. Elizabeth Baxter said they wanted to finalize the divorce as soon as possible. The judge must have agreed because the final order arrived in the mail 10 days later. Toby saw her mother often, since she spent a lot of time with her grandparents. Sometimes Rachel would plan something for the two of them, but their relationship was never the same. Toby spent most of her time with her friends, especially a petite blonde named Sabrina, who was practically part of our family. Sabrina was as sweet as she was cute, and I enjoyed having her around. They even started including me in their activities. One of their favorite activities was water skiing. We had a boat, and one summer vacation, we started going to a nearby lake on Saturdays. One Monday, they asked if we could spend the whole weekend at the lake, take the RV, and stay until Sunday evening. Since my schedule was free, I agreed. The girls spent the week planning. By Thursday, we'd packed everything they wanted. On Friday afternoon, a new red Jeep Cherokee pulled into the driveway. Sabrina jumped out, and an almost identical woman stepped out from the driver's side. Toby rushed to hug her. Sabrina and Toby led the nervous-looking woman over to me. Dad, Toby said, this is Julie. This is Julie, Sabrina's mom. I know you haven't met her yet. Julie extended her hand. Hi, Oliver. The girls have told me so much about you. Thanks for inviting me along this weekend. I have to admit, I was getting a little jealous that they were spending so much time with you and not me. She smiled playfully, and I got why Sabrina was such a delight. I glanced at Toby, who gave me a look that said, I've got this. My knees felt weak, and I knew when to back down. The trembling got worse when I looked at Sabrina, who raised an eyebrow at me. This is going to be great, I said to Julie. We always have a Julie was quick to realize what was going on. She looked from me to the girls and back again. Oh my God, she said. You didn't know, did you? The girls were all over her, hugging her and kissing her and asking her not to worry. Please, Mom, don't worry about it. We're going to be fine. Sabrina said, It's okay, Julie. Daddy's going to love you as much as I do, and he's a great guy. Toby added with a mischievous grin, You two go sit on the porch. I need to talk to Oliver. She said it in a firm but kind tone. They giggled and headed to the porch. I'm so sorry, Oliver, Julie said, her face flushing red. I had no idea they were trying to set us up. But then she relaxed into the embrace. I admitted it was embarrassing, but they're just kids. We both know they're trying to look out for us. So, you're single? She laughed softly and looked up at me with her big brown eyes. Yes, I am. Well, that's the point. You're packed, you've got the weekend free, and Lake will be great. I'm not a bad guy, as you've probably heard from Toby. Let's just go along with the girls' plan. It'll be fun, and we can mess with them a bit too. What do you say? She hesitated for a second, glanced at the girls' eager faces, then smiled. Okay, let's go. I gave the girls a thumbs up, and they cheered, running toward us. I stopped them before they got too excited, grabbing each by the arm. Girls, that wasn't very nice, I said. Trying to keep Sabrina gave me a stern look and said, I am not cute. We all started laughing, and the tension broke. They were too sweet to stay mad at us. I said, Stop it. You can't just mess with people's lives like that. Yeah, but I love Jules. I didn't know how to introduce you to her. Once again she brightened up immediately, and Sabrina tugged on my hand, saying, Let's go. I can't wait. It's going to be disgusting. Oliver, you'll see. Julie laughed, her tone lightening the mood. Sounds like it's going to be awesome, Ollie. I know, I replied. But Sab's right, we're burning daylight. We loaded the bags into the Jeep and set off after securing the boat and picking up propane. We hit the road, and it was only about a half-hour drive to the lake. Julie sat up front. While the girls sat in the back playing awful music through their Bluetooth speakers, Julie and I got to know each other better. It turned out she owned an insurance company and worked as a financial planner. I couldn't help but glance at her now and then. She was cute, petite with light blonde hair that cascaded down to her waist. She looked younger than me, though she was only 3 years my junior. Her large brown eyes, high cheekbones, and heart-shaped face made her look even more youthful. Her youthful appearance was enhanced by her slender figure, which was dressed in jeans and a button-up shirt. Up top, with a tan that hinted at outdoor adventures, I wondered if Sabrina would look like her mum when she grew up. When we arrived at the lake, I set up the boat while the girls changed into their swimsuits. Julie came out last and I nearly dropped what I was holding. She was stunning, slender but curvy in all the right places, with the same confident energy as her daughter, but with a certain naivety that made her even more attractive. She caught me staring and gave me a playful wink. She was done and asked me to spare her thee. I replied with a smile, "You know what you look like, Julie. I'm only human." We spent the next few hours water skiing. Julie turned out to be incredible at it, even steering the boat like a pro while I took my turn skiing. I wasn't as good as her or the girls, but I held my own. After skiing, we headed back to camp where the girls wanted to cook outside. We built a fire, grilled hot dogs, fried potatoes and onions, and opened a can of pork and beans. Camp food always tasted better. The evening was perfect. We sat around the picnic table talking as if we'd known each other for years. Julie, now Jules as the girls called her, fit right in. She started calling me Ollie, and the girls kept dropping hints that JWS was single. Finally, I asked, "So why hasn't some guy snatched you up yet, Jules? You're gorgeous, funny, smart, and you've got your own business." For a moment, she was quiet. Then she took a deep breath. "The main reason is Sabrina," she said. "I was young and foolish. I was in college and I thought I'd found the love of my life a week before graduation. I found out I was pregnant. I wasn't too upset because we had talked about getting married. But 3 days after I told Brad, I learned he'd been cheating on me. I dumped him and never looked back. When Sab was born, I didn't have time for a social life. By the time I could think about dating again, I realized I had this amazing gift. I couldn't do anything without considering her." "I get it." I said I feel the same way about Toby. She's everything to me. In particular, over the past 18 months, Julie has kept me grounded. She placed her hand on mine and said softly, "She tells Sab and me everything. I'm really sorry." "Yeah," I replied. "Life can be tough sometimes." We sat in comfortable silence, looking up to see 2 pairs of approving eyes watching us from under the canopy. Toby and Sabrina were whispering and giggling, clearly pleased with themselves. "I love your daughter," I told Julie. "She feels like part of my family, with how much time she spends here." Julie said, her voice catching, "that she loves you too. The other day she told me you're like the father she never had." Her big brown eyes grew teary, and a tear slid down her cheek. I gently wiped it away with my finger. "She's a great girl," I said, "and her mom is an incredible woman for raising her so well, especially on her own." Julie smiled, then stood up and kissed me on the cheek before heading back to the girls. We had a wonderful weekend. When it was time for them to leave, I walked Julie to her car just before. She got in, so I tapped on her window. "Jules, would you be interested in going out with me next Friday?" I asked, feeling a bit nervous. Sabrina squealed from inside the car, and Julie smiled brightly. "What time?" she asked. 6, I suggested. "We'll have dinner and find something fun to do." "Sounds great," she said, leaning in to kiss my cheek before driving off. When I got home, Toby was waiting for me. "Did you ask her out?" he asked, grinning. "Did you kiss her?" "To know and to keep your nose out," she said, and I heard Sabrina's echo from the car. "I knew it. She's perfect for you, Daddy. I love her so much, and Sabs is like a sister to me." I shrugged. "What happens, happens. Toby, you can't force it. Stop trying to be." She snuggled up against me. "I know, Daddy, but if I didn't do something, you'd never make a move. Not that I didn't like being the only girl in your life." I laughed. "You'll always have a special place in my heart that no one can take. You're my baby, and that'll never change." She purred contentedly, snuggled against me for a moment, and then went off to handle her own business. Our first date went well. I invited her to play racquetball. She was new to it, but she had played tennis before, so the mechanics were similar. When she got the hang of the rules and hitting the ball off the walls, she did great. It didn't hurt that she was a natural athlete, fast and quick to change direction, which her petite size helped with. After our game, we sat down near the court. And had a drink. Julie grabbed her phone and took a picture of us with our rackets and goggles. She sent it to the kids, who responded immediately. It was a nice memory. We both showered and I took her out to dinner. We found a great Italian place and stuffed ourselves, sitting in the booth and finishing our wine. Jules leaned into me, and it felt natural to put my arm around her. She nestled closer, smiling, and I realized how sweet she truly was. One thing I noticed was that she was really easy to talk to. When we got to her house, she leaned towards me, so I kissed her. I really wanted to kiss her too, maybe even more than she wanted to be kissed. The kiss was long and wonderful. Her lips were soft and tasted of wine and cherry chapstick. When we pulled apart, I noticed the curtains moving. I think we've got an audience. She giggled, and it was just like her daughter's giggle. Maybe her daughter was like her. I'm not surprised. You know, they're trying to set us up. Right, is that okay with you? I asked. She blushed and said, Yes, I like everything I've learned about you too. Same here, I replied. We'd better go inside before they tear the curtains down. We met every Friday for 4 months, getting closer and closer. I wanted our relationship to grow, but I didn't want to pressure her. Some of our dates were getting pretty heated toward the end. At the same time, I found that I enjoyed her friendship almost as much as I liked having her as my girlfriend. We were constantly chatting We texted throughout the day, sharing funny things or just a few words. If I saw or heard something I knew would make Jules laugh, I had to share it with her. We became very close, knowing everything about each other's lives. We started having dinner together every Tuesday, playing games and just hanging out. I was growing as fond of Sabrina as I was of her mom. They were so alike, if you knew one, you pretty much knew the other. The differences were small but only emphasized how similar they really were. We both had a great time, but Rachel was still around, which meant Toby was still around too. I didn't want anything to do with her and found her irritating. She'd try to talk to me when she came to pick up Toby, or when I dropped her off at her grandparents'. Rachel was still living with them along with Jerry. She'd lost her job at the clinic and was now working at another clinic across town. If she annoyed me too much, I'd ask if I heard from Jerry, which put a stop to her questions right away. How long will it take for you to forgive me? She asked one time. I replied that I didn't know if she thought she'd done anything wrong. I've never heard her say, "Forgive me, Oliver. I'm sorry for trying to make Toby think you were a liar. I'm sorry for trying to take her away from you. I'm sorry for trying to screw you in the divorce. Most of all, I'm sorry for cheating on you." I didn't hear it that time either. I just couldn't take responsibility for her actions. I wasn't even sure what forgiveness would mean in this situation. I'd come to terms with it and calmed down. I hadn't forgotten, but I wasn't going to waste energy being bitter. People have the right to make mistakes. They can divorce you, dump you, and end friendships. It's their choice. You just accept it and move forward. People do crappy things every day. At one point, I wanted to do the same. I thought about punishing her and Jerry, but I realized that they had to live with the consequences of their actions. I decided to leave the past behind and focus on moving forward. Rachel was unhappy, and I felt sorry for Jerry, but I wouldn't let him cause me any more problems. Rachel was even more upset when she found out I was dating Jules. This was after I dropped Toby off at her grandparents' house. Rachel stopped me as I was getting into my car. She said, "You're dating the mother of one of Toby's friends." I just stared at her. "Is it true?" she pressed. "That's none of your business," I told her. "I'm your wife. I have a right to know. You have a right to nothing. You're not my wife anymore. You found your soulmate, remember? It wasn't me." Then came the divorce. My business isn't yours anymore, and yours isn't mine. Stay out of it, Rachel. I left fuming that woman just couldn't leave things alone. I told Toby what had happened, and she was just as angry as I was. From then on, I arranged for her grandparents, Bob or Cindy, to pick her up. That took away a major source of stress for me. On the 1-month anniversary of our lake trip, I asked Jules out for a special date. We went to a nice restaurant and then to a club. She didn't drink much, usually just a beer or a single drink, but that night she had 2. I raised an eyebrow when she ordered the second one, and she laughed. Feeling wild and crazy today, huh? You're perfect, just like always. I told her, do you really think so? Ollie asked, tilting her head. I think you're pretty perfect too, she teased. If I'm so perfect, why haven't you asked me to spend the night? What made you think about it? I took a moment to collect my thoughts. Jules, I've been thinking about you since the first day I saw you on the boat in that bikini. As we started dating, I realized you were special, and I didn't want to push you or scare you off. You won't scare me off, she said. I told the girls not to wait up, so what are we still doing here? I asked, excited. Oh my God, let's get out of here. Do you want to spend the night with me? She blushed, took my hand and let me help her up. More than anything else in the world right now, she practically cuddled. It was up to me as we got out of the car, holding onto my arm the whole way home with her head resting on my shoulder. When we pulled into the garage, I let her out, and she stayed close to my side all the way to the bedroom. We fell asleep in each other's arms, making love twice during the night. Once I woke her up, and once she woke me up. I woke up the next morning on my back with her half lying on top of me, her hair spread over both of us, and her cheek resting on my shoulder. I played with her hair, watching her sleep until she finally opened her eyes. My place is here, Ollie. I know I can count on you. I replied, do you want to wake up here every morning? She looked at me and said, you mean living together? No, honey, well, yes. But what I mean is, will you marry me, Julie Barnes? She raised her small left hand between us, wiggling her fingers. I thought I said, starting to get out of bed. I'll hold that thought. She replied, but I can't hold anything else. I need peace so badly. I laughed and said, go ahead, I'll meet you back here. She scurried off and I went down to my office, remembering to use the bathroom along the way. I grabbed what I needed. I got the ring from the safe and went back to find her curled up under the blanket. I climbed back into bed, took her left hand again and looked into her eyes. I asked her, Julie, will you marry me? I slid the ring onto her finger. It was a bit too big and would need to be resized, but for the moment, it was perfect. She took the ring, examined it, and smiled. It's beautiful, she said. Where did you get it? When did you buy it? I reminded her that I told her I was going to an auction about a month ago. Yes, I remember. They were auctioning off the estate, right? That's right. I didn't mention it at the time, but I saw this ring in the catalog. I went there specifically to buy it and ask you to marry me. It was made in England around 1810 for the Duchess of Avon. It has a long history. What do you think? I love it. She said it's the most beautiful ring she's ever seen. So, are you going to answer my question? I asked with a smile. Oh yes, Oliver. Yes, I'll marry you. Oh my God, yes. I laughed and pulled her into a tight hug. It felt like a weight had finally been lifted. The long road I had walked, filled with anger, betrayal, and loss, was finally behind me. Rachel was out of my life, and though I still had some scars, I had moved on. I had found someone who made me happy, who made me laugh, and who gave my days meaning again. Jess was my partner in every sense of the word, and together we were building a future together, one filled with warmth and love. As we started planning our wedding, life felt lighter. Toby was thriving, and Sabrina was like a second daughter to me. Jess made me believe in happiness again. It wasn't just about finding love, but also about rediscovering a part of myself that had been buried under years of resentment and disappointment. We made the lake trips a regular thing, and every time we went, I felt more at peace. There was laughter, quiet moments, and a family we had formed. They were all reminders that life, no matter how painful it might seem at times, always had the potential to offer something beautiful on the other side. Rachel had her life, and I had mine for the first time in a long time. I could say with certainty that I was happy. The darkness had passed, and now in its place was a life I wanted to live, a life I chose with the people who mattered most, and that was enough.